The lunch rush hit like a tidal wave every weekday at Elena's table, a quaint, sunlit eatery tucked between towering glass buildings in the city's financial district. The bell above the door chimed nonstop. Forks clinked, conversations buzzed, and the smell of rosemary chicken and fresh-baked bread made even the busiest executives pause for a real meal. Elena Navarro, the manager, glided through it all like a calm breeze. Her dark brown hair was tied up in a bun, a pencil tucked behind one ear. Her apron bore the soft stains of a hardworking woman, and yet her posture remained graceful, almost regal. She wasn't just managing the place, she was the place. Regulars adored her. First-timers were drawn in by her kindness. But no one knew the weight she carried when she smiled. Out on the curb, a sleek black Rolls-Royce ghosted to a stop. The driver stepped out, opening the back door. From inside emerged a young man in a tailored button-down and black jeans. Sunglasses shielded his sharp eyes. No entourage, no name tag, just a quiet, deliberate stride into the world of the working class. Before we dive into this unforgettable tale of unexpected love and second chances, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more cinematic love stories, and tell us, what would you do if a billionaire's heir walked into your workplace? Drop your answers in the comments below. Adrian Sterling, only son of Harrison Sterling, one of the wealthiest men in the country, had a reputation for evading headlines. The world knew him as the heir to the Sterling estate, next in line for a billion-dollar legacy. But what most didn't know? Adrian had grown exhausted of penthouse brunches and fake smiles from socialites. He wanted to taste something real. He didn't even tell his father where he was going. Just said, "I'll be back after lunch." The moment Adrian stepped into Elena's table, something shifted. His eyes scanned the cozy interior, the handwritten chalkboard menu, the rows of mismatched mugs, and then landed on her. Elena stood at the counter, wiping it down with quick, practiced hands. She looked up and caught his gaze. For a moment, the noise dulled. The kitchen clatter faded. The soft indie song playing over the speakers became a distant hum. Adrian didn't smile, not right away. He just watched her. "Hi," Elena said, her voice smooth, warm. "First time here?" He cleared his throat. "Yeah. What do you recommend?" She tilted her head thoughtfully. "Depends. Are you the kind of guy who pretends to like kale? Or do you actually like kale?" Adrian let out a soft laugh, his first genuine one in weeks. "I'm more of a chicken and rice guy." "Then today's your lucky day," she replied. "Try the lemon herb roast. It's got that. I care about my life choices flavor without tasting like cardboard." She handed him a paper menu and pointed at the counter. "Order here when you're ready." Adrian nodded. "Thanks." "Elena," he added, reading the name on her tag. When she turned around, he stared for a few seconds too long. 15 minutes later, he sat at a corner table, slowly eating his roast chicken, pretending to scroll through his phone but occasionally stealing glances. Elena was laughing with a child at the front booth, crouched down to his level as she handed him a cookie. She looked untouchable, untainted, and Adrian felt like a man staring at a lighthouse from a stormy sea. He didn't even finish his food. He walked back to the counter with his tray. "How was it?" she asked. "Perfect. Thanks," he said. Then his hand lingered just a second longer than necessary as he handed her the receipt. Their fingers brushed. A subtle spark. Her eyes flickered up to meet his. And just like that, it was over. He gave a polite nod and walked out. But he turned back one last time, just before pushing open the door. Elena stood behind the counter, watching him go. Outside, Adrian climbed into the back seat of the Rolls. His driver raised an eyebrow. "Sir? You all right?" Adrian leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah," he said, still seeing her face in his mind. "I think I just found my favorite lunch spot." Adrian Sterling wasn't a man of habits. His schedule changed with the wind, board meetings, private flights, yacht parties, impromptu getaways to Greece. Nothing ever stuck. No place ever felt like it deserved a second visit. Until now. The very next day, the same Rolls-Royce pulled into the same narrow curb. No chauffeur this time. Adrian was driving himself. Baseball cap pulled low, designer hoodie zipped up. He stepped into Elena's table like he belonged there. Like yesterday wasn't just an accident. Elena noticed him the moment the door chimed. She was refilling coffee at table 6. Her eyes flicked up, narrowed slightly, then returned to her task like it meant nothing. But inside, her heart gave a small skip. Not because he was handsome, though he was. It was the why that puzzled her. Why would a man like him be back here? Her place was no luxury dining room. The chairs wobbled. The air conditioning clicked when it ran too long. And yet, here he was again. "Hey," Adrian greeted casually, approaching the counter. "Back already?" she asked, a faint smirk playing on her lips. "I forgot to ask for dessert yesterday," he said. She leaned on the counter. "We don't do dessert." He grinned. "Then I guess I'll just have to settle for your roast chicken again. Coming right up." He paid in cash. No card, no name. Just anonymity. This time, he sat closer to the counter. Still alone. Still pretending to scroll through his phone. But this time, he wasn't watching the room, he was watching her. And Elena noticed. Between taking orders and checking on tables, she'd glance his way. Once, their eyes met. He didn't look away. Back in his office tower across the city, Adrian's absence didn't go unnoticed. His father, Harrison Sterling, stood at a floor-to-ceiling window, frowning. "Where is Adrian?" The assistant stammered. "He said he had a lunch meeting." "With who?" "He didn't say, sir." Harrison turned, a sour expression tightening his face. "He's wasting time. I want him briefed on the Geneva property deal before 3. "Yes, sir." Meanwhile, Adrian was eating his lunch slower than necessary. He wanted to stay longer, but didn't know how to. He was the kind of man who usually commanded a room. But here, he felt like an intruder in a warm, ordinary world he had no right to belong to. When Elena brought over his receipt this time, she hesitated. "You don't look like a guy who eats alone much." He looked up. "Is it that obvious?" "Kind of," she smiled. "You keep looking around like you're trying to remember how restaurants work." Adrian chuckled, then decided to be bold. "Would you ever join me?" "For lunch, I mean." Elena blinked. "Join you?" "Yeah, nothing weird. Just talk. I think you'd be more interesting than my phone." Before she could answer, her assistant manager walked by and whispered, not quietly enough, "Girl, he's thirsty. You better ask him if he wants a loyalty card, too." Elena's cheeks burned. She gave Adrian a sheepish smile. "Sorry about that. We joke around a lot here." He shook his head, smiling. "No offense taken." She looked at him, really looked. His eyes weren't arrogant. They weren't trying to charm her. They were sincere, curious, a little lonely, maybe. "I can't sit while I'm working," she said, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "Maybe next time," he said, voice low. She nodded and walked away. But the truth? She didn't stop thinking about that invitation all day. And neither did he. That night, Adrian sat in his apartment overlooking the skyline. Every inch of the place screamed wealth. Glass walls, curated furniture, a chef's kitchen he barely used. But it all felt empty. He grabbed his phone and looked up the Eatery. No social media. Just a basic website. One image of Elena with her team, standing in front of a wooden sign that read "Made with Care." He stared at it too long. The next morning, Harrison confronted him. "You've been disappearing. Skipping investor calls. And for what? Some dusty lunch counter." Adrian didn't flinch. "It's not dusty. It's honest." "You're a Sterling," Harrison snapped. "You don't mix with waitresses." Adrian's voice was quiet, firm. "She's a manager." "Oh, so now you're keeping tabs?" "No, Dad. I'm paying attention for once." Harrison leaned back, unimpressed. "You fall for every pretty face who brings you a plate?" Adrian met his eyes. "No, just one." Silence hung heavy in the room. Back at the Eatery, Elena swept up before opening. She thought about the way Adrian asked her to join him. He wasn't just flirting. He was reaching for something. She wasn't sure she could give it, but she hoped he'd come back again. The skies over the city darkened by mid-afternoon. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and customers at Elena's table glanced nervously out the windows. Elena stood behind the counter, wiping down the register, when her assistant poked her arm. "You should check the radar, this one's serious." Elena looked outside. The sky had turned an eerie shade of gray. She sighed. "Let's start packing up early. If it gets bad, we'll close before dinner rush." By 5 p.m., the storm hit like a wall of water. Lightning streaked across the sky. Wind whipped through the trees. The power flickered, once, then again, before it cut out completely. The small Eatery went silent, save for the crack of thunder outside. Candles were lit. The staff began closing down. A few regulars rushed to finish their meals and escape into the rain. And then the bell above the door rang. Adrian Sterling walked in, soaked to the bone. No cab, no driver. Just him, in the rain dripping from his hair onto the tiled floor. Elena turned, startled. "You came through that?" He gave a breathless smile. "Yeah, I was in the area." You're insane, she said, grabbing a towel from behind the counter. She handed it to him, and he took it without a word, drying his face and neck. Storm knocked out the power, she added. We're technically closed. He looked around the dimly lit room. A few candles flickered on tables. Then I guess I picked the perfect time to not eat. She smiled, despite herself. Sit. You look like a walking thundercloud. Adrian sat at a table near the window. Elena poured 2 cups of tea from an old camping kettle they kept for emergencies. She brought one to him and sat across from him. It was the first time she'd ever sat with him. No customers. No noise. Just rain drumming on the windows and the smell of wet pavement in the air. He sipped the tea and stared at her. I needed to get away, he said. Everything was too loud today. She nodded. You seem like someone who's used to noise. I am. Cameras. Investors. Fake smiles. It's exhausting. Elena looked at him. And yet, you come here. He leaned back. Because this place isn't fake. You're not fake. She blinked, caught off guard. I grew up in houses so big you could scream and no one would hear you, he continued. When my mom died, I was 13. My father gave me a Rolex at the funeral. Said I had to grow up now. Elena softened. I'm sorry. He gave a weak smile. Don't be. Just. Something about this place reminds me of who I wanted to be. The kind of life I always wondered about. You mean normal? She said gently. He nodded. Yeah. The kind where people care about things because they matter, not because they're expensive. She looked down, fiddling with her necklace, a small, old silver locket. He noticed. What's in it? He asked. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a photo of a man in a chef's coat. My father, she said. He opened this place. I took it over when he passed. Adrian stared. He must have been proud. I hope so. The room fell quiet again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was warm. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something gentler was forming. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. You ever feel like the life you have isn't the one you were supposed to live, but you're too far in to change it? Elena swallowed. More times than I can count. Their eyes met. It lingered. That invisible line between them shimmered for a moment, trembling. And then, just as Adrian began to reach for her hand. Click. The power came back on. Lights flickered. The espresso machine beeped loudly in the back. Reality crashed in. Elena stood quickly, flustered. I should check the freezer. Make sure nothing thawed. Adrian stood too. Yeah, I should go. Sorry. Didn't mean to stay so long. She shook her head. No, it's okay. He hesitated. Will you be here tomorrow? I'm always here, she said. He gave a nod and walked to the door. Before stepping out, he turned back. Elena. Yeah. Thanks for letting me be nobody for a while. Then he stepped into the rain and was gone. She stood at the door, tea cooling in her hand, heart suddenly pounding like the thunder outside. The next morning, Elena opened her eatery with the same practiced motions, lights on, chairs down, ovens humming. But something felt off. Her staff seemed distracted. Her assistant, Marcy, avoided eye contact. 2 of the waiters whispered behind the counter, pretending to be busy. And every time the door opened, someone glanced up a little too quickly. She brushed it off, until a customer held out a phone and said, Is this you? Elena froze. On the screen was a blurry photo taken through the rain-fogged window. Her and Adrian, sitting together at the table during the storm. Her face was clear. His was shadowed, but recognizable to anyone who followed tabloid gossip. The headline read, Billionaire's son spotted cozying up with Eatery girl. New romance or scandal brewing. Elena felt the color drain from her face. She excused herself and went to the back office, closing the door behind her. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through article after article. They had her full name, the name of the restaurant. Some of the photos were taken just outside. Others were clearly zoomed-in shots from across the street. How? Who? She wanted to scream. When she stepped back out, the dining room had transformed. Not just in mood, but in crowd. It was packed, not with regulars, but with strangers. Men in suits with fancy watches. Stylish women with phones out. Influencers, vloggers. They weren't there for food. They were there for her. Someone whispered, That's her. A camera flashed. Elena clenched her jaw and turned around. In the kitchen, Marcy followed her. Elena, I swear we didn't say anything. Maybe someone spotted him leaving in the rolls. Elena didn't reply. She just scrubbed at a spotless counter until her knuckles hurt. Later that afternoon, a man in an expensive navy blue suit stepped into the eatery. He didn't order food. He asked to speak with her privately. She led him to the office. He closed the door and set down a thick envelope. "I'm a representative of the Sterling family," he began smoothly. "On behalf of Mr. Harrison Sterling, I'm here to offer you a settlement." "Eh, what?" Elena asked. The man remained calm. "We understand you've had some level of contact with Adrian Sterling. The family is requesting you refrain from further interaction. In return, they're prepared to offer you this sum, and the lease to the building, if you agree to leave quietly within the month." Elena stared at the envelope like it was radioactive. "You want me to sell my dignity for cash? I want you to protect your livelihood, Ms. Navarro. Surely you've noticed the attention your restaurant's received in the last 24 hours. If this continues, you'll lose control of your reputation and your business." She picked up the envelope. Then she tore it in half. "I'm not for sale." The man nodded once, disappointed but unsurprised. "Then I advise you to prepare for consequences." He left as calmly as he'd come. Elena stood there, her hands shaking, heart pounding, her world suddenly turning unfamiliar. That night, the dining room was empty. The storm had passed. The fame seekers were gone, but so was the warmth. The regulars had stopped coming. The cozy hum had become a cold echo. And Adrian? He didn't return. Not the next day. Not the day after. The storm that had connected them now separated them. Days passed. The restaurant's income dipped. Her staff grew tense. Someone had written "Gold Digger" in chalk outside the door. Elena stopped wearing makeup. Stopped tying her hair neatly. Stopped looking up every time the bell above the door rang. Until one Friday evening, after closing time, the bell rang anyway. She turned from the sink and froze. Adrian stood there. Not in disguise. Not hiding. And not alone. Cameras waited outside, flashing through the window. Elena's breath caught. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Adrian stepped forward. "I let my silence speak for me, and that was the biggest mistake of my life." She looked away, voice cold. "So you send lawyers instead?" He flinched. "I didn't know about that. I swear. My father did it. I found out and came straight here." She folded her arms. "Why now? Why after all this time?" He took a deep breath. "Because I realized something," he said. "The storm wasn't the problem. The silence afterward was. I was scared. Scared of dragging you into my world. But it's not my world if you're not in it." She stared at him, the pain still fresh. "You let them treat me like I was nothing." "I never thought you were nothing," he said. "I thought you were everything. And that scared the hell out of me." The door behind him opened. Marcy peeked out, then gasped. Staff and onlookers began gathering. Adrian reached into his coat and pulled out a folded contract. He set it on the counter. "Elena's table is now yours," he said. "Fully. I bought the building. No landlord. No risk. No one can ever use it to hurt you again." Elena stared at the papers, then at him. "Why would you do this?" "Because I love you," he said, voice unwavering. "Not the version they see on camera. The you who works through pain. Who makes strangers feel like family. Who gave me a seat at your table when I was starving for something real." The room was silent. Then, slowly, she stepped forward and hugged him. Outside, the crowd erupted. But inside, there was only the warmth of her hands around his waist and the truth between them at last. The following morning, headlines roared across every major site. Billionaire's son shocks public with love confession to Eatery manager. Buys her restaurant building in grand gesture. Photos of Adrian holding Elena in a gentle embrace inside Elena's table flooded social media. Paparazzi camped outside the eatery. Interviews were requested. TV anchors speculated. But inside those walls, Elena and Adrian had made a quiet promise to protect what they had from the noise. It wasn't easy. There were reporters asking if it was all a publicity stunt. Investors calling Adrian to say he'd gone soft. His father, Harrison Sterling, issued a formal statement distancing the Sterling Corporation from any personal decisions made by Mr. Adrian Sterling. But none of that seemed to shake Adrian anymore. He knew what mattered. A week later, Adrian entered the restaurant during a calm afternoon lull. He wasn't in disguise anymore. In fact, he now carried plates from the kitchen, refilled water glasses, and learned how to properly operate the espresso machine, although he still burned the milk sometimes. The staff, initially awkward around him, grew to accept him as, well, part of the team. "Careful with those cups," Elena said one afternoon, watching him wobble with a tray. "I'm in training," Adrian grinned. "Be gentle." Elena rolled her eyes. Billionaire or not, you drop my plates, you're mopping floors. He stepped close, lowered his voice. I'd mop every floor in the city if it meant keeping your smile. She paused, caught off guard again by how easily he could turn her walls to ash. And then, just as she was about to answer, Marcy burst in from the front. Elena, she panted. Your dad's recipe book, it's gone. Elena froze. What? They all rushed to the front table where the old, hand-bound leather notebook had sat for years. The one her father used to scribble recipes, notes, and memories. It was more than a book, it was his soul. Gone. Adrian sprang into action. Check the cameras. They did. The footage showed a man in a black cap, sitting alone for 20 minutes. He glanced around, then slid the book into his coat before calmly walking out. Elena's hands shook. That book, it's all I had left. Adrian took her shoulders gently. Then we get it back. And he did. He used every contact, every string he could pull. Within 48 hours, the book was returned anonymously in a brown package. No note. No explanation. Just the book, perfectly intact. Elena cried when she opened it. Not out of sadness, but because for once, someone had fought for her. Not with promises. With action. She turned to Adrian that evening, after the shop had closed, and asked, Why me? He looked up from the dish rack. Why not you? You could have anyone. I don't want anyone, he said simply. I want the woman who brings coffee to the homeless man outside before she clocks in. The one who fixes wobbly chairs herself. The one who makes strangers feel safe. He walked closer. You didn't just feed me food, Elena. You fed something inside me I didn't know was starving. She stood quietly, unsure what to say. So he reached into his pocket. No ring. No script. Just a folded napkin with a drawing, a rough sketch of a house, a coffee shop beneath it, and a dog. You once told me you didn't know if this life was the one you were supposed to live, Adrian said. So what if we built the one we chose? She stared at the napkin, and then at him, and finally whispered, yes. Months passed. Elena's table became more than just a local favorite. It became a symbol of real love, of quiet strength, of the kind of fairy tale that didn't need castles, just two people choosing each other again and again. They never sold the story to magazines. They never gave an exclusive. But occasionally, someone passing through would spot a tall man in rolled-up sleeves wiping tables beside a beautiful woman humming as she refilled salt shakers. And they'd whisper, that's them, the billionaire and the manager. But to each other, they were simply Adrian and Elena. Because in the end, he came for lunch. But stayed for love. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who still believes in love that finds you when you least expect it. Subscribe for more stories that stir the soul and tell us in the comments. Did Adrian and Elena's journey remind you of someone you know? We'd love to hear your thoughts.